Hey, Product Hunt community, welcome to the Explainer. So glad you're here. Okay, today we are tackling a literal hair-pulling pain point that I know every maker, founder, and product leader out there has faced: organizational alignment. If you've ever worked in a startup that's scaling fast or a big enterprise trying to innovate, you've absolutely felt this friction. You have this incredible vision, your teams are super talented, and yet, somehow, the execution just completely misses the mark. So today, we're looking at a framework and a platform built specifically to bridge that massive gap between your high-level strategy and your daily granular execution.
Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. Why do brilliant strategies end up dying in a drawer by March? I mean, we all know the drill, right? Leadership heads off to this fancy offsite in December, they brainstorm, they use a million sticky notes, they dream big. But fast forward 90 days, and the teams on the ground are completely disconnected from that grand vision, just totally bogged down in the daily grind. It's a syndrome that plagues product teams, marketing departments, the whole shebang.
Actually, the source material captures this perfectly. It highlights that beautiful strategy the company designs in January and nobody remembers in March. And frankly, this isn't just some minor annoyance. It is a massive waste of resources, time, and human potential. Think about the energy poured into creating those plans. When that disconnect happens, it basically means your company isn't actually moving toward its intended goals. The execution is just happening in a vacuum.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the root of the problem often lies literally right in front of us. Think about the typical setup. You've got the CEO or the VP of product operating out of a glossy PowerPoint deck or some high-level OKR spreadsheet. Meanwhile, the middle managers are wrestling with these complex Gantt charts, and the developers and analysts are pulling tickets on a Kanban board. This fragmented tool landscape forces teams to speak completely different languages, which creates incredibly deep operational silos. When the tools don't talk, the people don't talk. But you know what? To truly understand why we build these disconnected silos, we kind of have to look past the software and look at ourselves. There's actually a biological flaw at play here.
All right, Section 1, the biological flaw, bureaucracy versus the human brain.
So, diving into the underlying cognitive reasons we struggle with large-scale cooperation. As the historian Yuval Noah Harari brilliantly points out in his book *Sapiens*, human brains naturally rely on free association and holistic thought. Think about it. When you think of a mortgage, you might think of your house, which reminds you of your neighborhood, which reminds you of that great local restaurant. It's all connected. But to survive and scale as societies, we had to invent bureaucracy. We literally forced human information into non-human compartments or drawers just to organize it. One drawer for taxes, another for property. And in the corporate world, we did the exact same thing. We forced holistic strategy into separate, disconnected drawers across different departments, creating the very silos we hate today. We basically reprogrammed ourselves to think like filing cabinets.
And that brings us to the absolute core of today's explainer, Okydone. Okydone is a flow-based business agility framework. But listen, it is way more than just another project management tool. It's actually designed as a cognitive solution. By integrating all your data into one transparent source of truth, it repairs that biological rift between high-level strategy and daily execution. It lets us step away from the rigid filing cabinets of the corporate world and return to a more interconnected, natural way of working. And to pull this off, Okydone leverages an architecture that should be very familiar to the product and tech leaders listening today, mapping beautifully to Simon Sinek's famous Golden Circle concept.
Section 2. The Three Perspectives. The Golden Circle of Execution.
By structuring data through this golden circle lens, the framework creates profound company-wide alignment. Here are the three core pillars. First, you have goals. This is the strategic why and the desired impact. Second, you have plans. This is the tactical how, the roadmap of initiatives needed to actually get there. And third, you have tasks. This is the execution what, where the continuous work actually happens. Now, the real magic of Okydone is that it isn't three separate modules. It's the exact same data viewed differently depending on your role in the organization. The information simply changes clothes.
Diving into the first perspective, the goals view. This acts as a drag-and-drop hierarchical tree where leadership defines outcomes. Now, what's really interesting about this is that it's not static. As work happens down in the trenches, progress automatically bubbles up through this tree. So the executives get real-time visibility into the why without ever having to micromanage the what. Pretty cool, right?
Then we shift seamlessly to the plans view. Again, same data, entirely different perspective. This acts as a Gantt-style timeline handling the time-based reality of when things happen. For product and portfolio managers navigating complex roadmaps, this perspective is absolutely essential. Notice the sharp contrast here. It connects the overarching goals to actual scheduled tactical initiatives, giving you that critical context of time and sequence. And finally, we get to the ground floor,
the tasks view. But this isn't your standard chaotic Kanban board. The swim lanes here group tasks directly by their parent goals. It visually enforces what the Okydone framework calls mandatory connectivity. That's the golden rule that no task exists without a plan, and no plan exists without a goal. The execution is fundamentally, permanently anchored to the strategy.
Section 3, Grounding the Theory, the annual budget planning cycle.
Now, concepts and frameworks are great and all, but to see if this actually holds up under real corporate pressure, let's look at a massive, heavy enterprise use case, the annual budget planning cycle. On one side, we have the overarching strategy settings for the entire budget cycle. On the other, we're drilling down into a specific departmental budget item, like operations and facilities. You set the dates, the tags, the assignees. This sets up the bedrock foundation for company-wide alignment right from the get-go.
And just consider the scale of this. This single strategy branches out into cross-departmental coordination involving sales, engineering, operations, HR, marketing, you name it. Okydone scales incredibly smoothly across all these diverse, complex business units. Everyone is working in their own contextual view, but, and this is key, they are all tethered to the exact same core financial goal. Most importantly, it completely eliminates those heavy, endless update meetings and the terrifyingly messy spreadsheet consolidations.
Section 4, Under the Hood, Real-Time Technical Power.
For the builders tuning in, an experience this seamless requires some serious horsepower. This isn't just a pretty to-do list, it is a robust, modern enterprise architecture. We're talking React 19 and Supabase, which ensures that everything features real-time sync. If a developer moves a task to done, the CEO's dashboard updates instantly. It honestly feels as collaborative and fast as editing a live Google Doc. Add in granular permissions and a multi-tenant architecture, and it's perfectly suited for everyone from agile early-stage startups to massive consulting firms managing multiple clients.
So the crucial point here is the number 4. Why 4? Well, because Okydone completely replaces the outdated binary done or not done checkbox with 4 incredibly smart progress modes. Because let's face it, strategy isn't always binary, and how we measure it definitely shouldn't be either.
Consider the brilliant flexibility of these options. You can track progress manually. You can base it on numeric KPI metrics, calculating automatically from an initial, current, and target value. You can use child items average, which rolls up the progress from sub-goals automatically. Or you can use task completion, where simply dragging cards across the Kanban board fills the progress bar. You get to choose the exact metric that fits the reality of the work.
And this brilliantly illustrates how Okydone handles one of the harshest realities of project management, dependencies. For instance, if a strict finish-to-start dependency is configured, a cost analysis must finish before a cost reduction program can start. Because the entire system is unified, configuring these date boundaries cascades updates across the timeline automatically. If one team slips up, the impact on the overarching strategy is immediately visible to everyone. No surprises.
Section 5. The Okydone Manifesto, a cultural shift. But listen, to truly adopt this framework, you need a cultural shift. Just like the original Agile Manifesto changed software development forever, the Okydone Guide outlines core principles for business agility, really leaning into lightweight continuous flow rather than those rigid start and stop cycles. They value business agility over rigid methodology, outcomes over mere outputs, alignment over strict control, and flow over fixed cadence. It is all about championing learning, continuous adaptation, and driving actual results rather than just checking arbitrary boxes in a bureaucratic system. Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. I want you to look at your own tech stack and your own planning cycles. Are you ready to stop working in silos and truly connect your strategy to execution? Because the tools to bridge the gap between the boardroom's vision and the developer's keyboard are finally here. It is time to take your strategy out of the drawer, put it into a continuous flow, and watch your execution finally align with your ambition. Thank you so much to the Product Hunt community for exploring this with me today.